Okay, working on a Ford Excursion here and doing a water pump. The original Ford water pumps for the 7.3 were these cast aluminum ones here, and I'm personally just not the biggest fan of them. And then the thermostat housings, I guess kind of hard to see, but are just stamped sheet metal. And if you leave them alone and don't touch them, like you don't have to change the thermostat or whatever, they're honestly fine. Um, but uh, but they're very prone to bending, and then they leak like crazy and all that kind of stuff. Um, and in the original Ford water pump, the cold water side of the water pump is on the driver's side, but the cold water side of the radiator is on the passenger side. And so it comes with this pretty long coolant hose to make that transition. Um, so for those who don't know, the 7.3 is actually an international engine, like International Harvester, and so are all the Ford motors, the Ford diesels, from the 6.9 IDI to the 6.4 Power Stroke. But I guess Ford just had to change the name of it to sit at the cool kids table and call it a Power Stroke because International is not cool enough to put on the side of the truck or some bullshit like that. I don't know. I think it's really stupid to me that they changed the names and everything just to, sound more manly or something. I don't really get what the fuck it's about. But so, anyways, this one 7.3 in the international world is called a 444, and the Fords get the cast aluminum water pump. The internationals get a cast iron water pump. And this bolt hole here, like obviously it's not really useful for jack shit on this application because it's right in the way of the belt. But on like a FedEx truck or a school bus or something, there would be an idler pulley that went right here. But the international ones are cast iron. They have a water filter provision right on them and a shutoff valve for the water filter. What this is really for is if you have a chemical water filter for green coolant that you can turn on and off the flow to the water filter to supplement the chemicals in the green coolant if you need to. We're going to be using red heavy truck coolant, and so we don't need to do that, but this is also really convenient just for changing the filter. When you're using red heavy truck coolant, you have to make sure that you have what's called a 0 unit coolant filter with no chemicals in it whatsoever. In the case of Baldwin, that's a part number for a 0 unit coolant filter. And of course, you can look up the part number and make sure that it's a 0 unit. But the other way that you can tell is typically, not always, but if you don't hear anything rattling around in there, it's a 0 unit. Most of the chemical filters have little little pellets inside the filter, and when you shake the filter around, you can kind of hear them rattling around in there. So I really like that the international pumps are cast iron instead of cast aluminum. I really like the coolant filter. And the cold water side of the water pump is on the passenger side of the engine, which is great because, like I said, the cold water side on the radiator is on the passenger side. And so you can get this shorter hose to go on here instead of having, a 3 foot long hose. Of course, the problem with that is now you have like a custom hose that, you can't buy it just in O'Reilly's or something like you can the original Ford lower radiator hose. But this one here is, a nice silicone hose and should last a very long time. And you can just buy an extra one and keep it in the truck with you. So of course you can do this by just simply going out and buying a water pump. But then you have to provide your own hose. But there are a lot of websites online, Riff Raff and Diesel Site and a couple other that make a kit for doing this. And it comes with 3 Baldwin filters, the lower radiator hose, the fitting that you need for the heater line. Because on the Ford pump, the fitting is right on top. Where here, we don't have a provision on top. So you can see this hose doesn't have anywhere to go to. So we just simply relocate it to over here, and they give you a new hose for that. And then it also comes with new bolts and all that kind of stuff. And then in this one, we got a billet aluminum thermostat housing, which is really nice because then you can actually, you know, take those on and off a couple times, and it almost entirely eliminates the water leak from the thermostat housing. And of course, there's, you know, easier ways to add a coolant filter, and cheaper ways for that matter too, to add a coolant filter to a 7.3, but I really like this option here. And I've found that these cast iron pumps to be more durable. And, you know, they're not a totally oddball part. Granted, you can't buy it at O'Reilly's on a Sunday or whatever, but, you know, like I said, these pumps came on school buses and, you know, whatever the hell else that had an international 444 in it. So they're not like one-off pumps or whatever. We're going to be doing a couple other things to this excursion. Going to make a couple other videos about it, and just figured I'd show this water pump.